Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is English Mastery. Today I'll be talking about punctuation marks, and basically this video is about how to use punctuation marks correctly. Although I wouldn't be exhausting all that concerns punctuation marks. Hopefully in our next video we'll continue from where we will be stopping in this video. So what are punctuation marks? Punctuation is the use of special marks or signs to divide a writing into sentences, clauses, phrases, etc. Now, without the use of these punctuation marks, statements will never come to an end and will be practically meaningless. You see, now, have you ever imagined reading an article, a literal work, without the use of full stops, without the use of colons, without the use of semicolons? It would be absolutely meaningless. It would make just no sense to read a literal work without the use of punctuation. So punctuation marks are that important. So let's just begin with a number of them. The first I'll be talking about is the full stop, or what is called the period in American English. What are the uses of full stop? One is that it is used to mark the end of a sentence or sentences. Here are a few examples. Mr. Donald is a good man. Now, if this statement or this sentence ends without a period or a full stop, it will be wrong. It should end. Every complete sentence should be terminated or should be ended with a full stop. Another example: Comfort has bought a brand new car. So you have a full stop there. It's that simple. Now please take note, do not use a full stop after an exclamatory or interrogative sentence. What do I mean? An example is, what a shame to our generation. This is not just a sentence, this is an exclamation. Now when you are writing down an exclamation, it should end with an exclamation mark, not a period, not a full stop. And when you're asking a question in this other example, are you not one of the followers of Christ? Now this is a question and it should end with a question mark, not a full stop. Now, so another use of the full stop is to indicate abbreviations, initials, degrees, titles, like some things like this. February. Now definitely Feb is an abbreviation for, or a short form of February. Now when we do this, you should end that abbreviation or that short form with a full stop. Reverend ends with a full stop when written in this form. Rev. Professor ends with a full stop when written in this form. Prof. And then the rest are degrees. MD, medical doctor, legal, LLB, BNG. Now these are all degrees, and to indicate them you have to apply full stop, including initials, Adeboye EA. Now of course you see the use of the periods or the full stop in these titles and these initials and these degrees. So this is a very key important use of the full stop. So colon it's used after a speaker's name in a dialogue or a conversation. For instance, when you have a conversation with someone and it has to be in a written form, a conversation between two persons, the name of the person comes and then a colon follows the name before whatsoever the person says follows. Here is an example: Paul. You see, Paul is actually the name of the first person, and then a colon follows before whatever Paul has got to say comes into in written form. So you have something like this: why do you want to marry an Indian? This is a conversation between Paul and the second person. Obviously, this is a question because it ends with a question mark. Now, why do you want to marry an Indian? And then this is the second person, Dimson. Notice that the colon also appears before the response from Dimson. Their women are hardworking and pious. So this is one very important use of the colon punctuation mark. And then another use of the colon punctuation is that it is used to introduce formal listing, an explanation, or enumeration. Here's an example: when coming for your traditional marriage, you must bring. Now you have the colon mark there. After the colon mark, then you have a list of the things expected, to be brought for the traditional wedding marriage. It says 20 tubers of yam, a bag of rice, and 20 seeds of kola nuts, and a bag of salt. You see, the colon comes in between the list and the first initial part of the sentence. It says, when coming for a traditional marriage, you must bring, and then you have the list of what the person is expected to bring. The colon is actually used to introduce the list. The colon, another example here is that the best universities in the world are, and you have the colon mark: Harvard University, Oxford University, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the University of Cambridge. Please, this is just a list I framed up. They might not be in their right order. So, another use of the colon punctuation mark is that it is used to introduce a formal quotation. Maybe when if you find yourself working on a literal material or a book, and then you need to introduce a quote from another literal material, you should introduce it with the colon operator, the colon mark. Here's a very good example of how it can be used. According to Vincent Osawinge. Now you have the date, and then you have the colon. Now the colon mark comes before the quote itself. You see, the colon mark comes, and then you have the quotes. Intelligence can shoot a man up, but only his integrity can keep him there. Next, the colon is used to separate chapters from verses, most especially in Bible references, just like you have here a few examples. John chapter 3. Now the 3 there is the chapter, and the 16 there is the verse. So the colon is used to separate the chapter and the verse. The chapter comes first and is followed by the verses, or the verse. It is used to separate a title and a subtitle of a book. This is a very good example: semantics. Now in this example, semantics is the chapter of the book, and then an introduction to the science of meanings. So an introduction to the science of meanings is a subtitle. It is also used to indicate time. It is used to indicate time that's between the hours and the minutes of the time that is being read at any particular instant. So, okay, the next punctuation mark is the semicolon. Now, what about the semicolon? When a writer does not want to break the line of thought in a sentence, or wants to indicate a pause that is longer than the comma, he uses the colon. You see, there seems to be a similarity between the comma and the colon. A lot of persons in actual fact, have great difficulties discerning when the comma should be used and when the semicolon should be used. So, maybe before we're done with punctuation marks, I would be able to give us tips that will help us in to be able to distinguish when either of these punctuations should be used. So, but here are a few examples for now. A few examples and uses. The semicolon is used to link closely related clauses when the conjunction is omitted. Closely related clauses. So now, what is a conjunction? Conjunction is simply it's one of the figures of speech. Sorry, one of the parts of speech rather that is used to join one or two sentences, clauses, or phrases. So, an example of a conjunction is and, but, although. Now, these are conjunctions, basically a word that joins together sentences, clauses, and so on and so forth. So, here are a few examples of how this is used. Now, the Vice Chancellor of the university is humane. He treats the staff as if they were equals. Now, you notice after the first sentence there is a semicolon, and then a sentence follows. The sentence that follows is a different sentence or a different clause from the initial, but in the absence of a conjunction, I can join these two to make a whole sentence using a semicolon. So that's why the semicolon is introduced there. So the Vice Chancellor of the university is humane, and then since I don't want to use a conjunction here like and, I choose to introduce a semicolon. And that example is Jeff Bezos lives in a mansion. There's a semicolon there. He is a successful business mogul. So in the absence of a conjunction, I use a semicolon. It's an easy way. You could use it to merge two sentences. You could use it to link up two clauses or phrases, etc. Another example is that the semicolon is used to separate series of different items in a consecutive pattern. Now, this use is peculiar and unique to the semicolon. Here is an example of what I'm talking about. The important personalities that were invited for the book launch include, if you remember when I talked about the colon, I said a colon is used to introduce a list, of items or whatsoever. A list of items, of names, anything that comprise whatever I want to introduce. So now a colon is there, but though I'm not talking about a colon now, but just to remind you, this is just a reminder of how the colon could be used. Now, so this sentence is the important personalities that were invited for the book launch include, I have Mr. Bill Fence, the Director of Research and Development, and then there is a colon there, not a comma, a colon, and then I have another name, Dr. Mike Fish, the Director of Finance, a colon, a semicolon rather, Mr. Okechukwu Stanley, the Head of Customer Care Services, and Mrs. Sandra Hassan, the Head of the Human Resource. Now, see the point here. The point here is that I introduced the semicolon to separate the different consecutive parts that forms this sentence. It's a pattern. The first name is introduced together with its position, and it is separated not with a comma but with a colon, because I'm talking about different items although different items, but there is a unique pattern, there is a consecutive pattern. It's a flow, different parts of a particular system, a particular cycle, and that's why the semicolon is used. This is one very, very important usage of the semicolon. Now, if you've followed me to this point, I do hope this has been informative to you. Please do subscribe and click the notification bell. You could also share this on any of your social media handle, and see you next time when we upload a new video. Thank you. Here are examples. 8:15 a.m. 8 is the hour and the 15 is the